So we're going to finish up our January journey here today. And that was about this idea of the sacred journey. We've been talking all month about how is it that we stay in our Christed selves, in our higher consciousness, in our divine being. You know, we live in a world that makes it pretty hard, frankly, right? I think so, for most of us, right? It's hard. You know, we come on Sunday and we're all pumped up and we have, this feeling of faith, or, we love our brothers and sisters, and then we walk out the door and then, man, it's all shot when something happens. So how do we do that? Last week we talked about this idea of the art and science of healing. All of the previous sermons are on YouTube. You can see the services on Facebook. We talked a little bit about this idea that really we're always looking outside of ourselves. We're looking outside of ourselves for healing. And the reality is that we have everything that we need inside of us. If we think about our very bodies and the abilities that it has to heal a wound, to heal a bone, all of the amazing things that our bodies can do, if we just come into alignment with our bodies, into an understanding that we have this power within us, our lives can change. So today we're going to be talking about this idea of faith, which is the power of the month. And January, our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, began the year with faith for a very purposeful reason. It was purposeful in that faith is the bedrock. Faith is what we anchor ourselves in to be able to move into the world and activate these other powers. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, believed that it was a faculty that we had. It was an essence, a power, a beingness that we had within us that we could use on our spiritual journey and to practice our faith, practice our spiritual development. So we're talking today about going all in on faith. Now we have to first understand and question, well, what is faith? How do we use it? And what does it really mean to go all in? So I'm going to start today by talking about what faith is not. So as I said, we are conditioned to look outside of ourselves, to look to this God that's out there, pie in the sky, and plead and beg for faith, or plead and beg for something for our lives to change. That is not faith, according to what we're talking about here today. We think of faith as something we must acquire, and especially we must acquire it before anything can happen. So if I only had faith, if I only had faith in myself, if I only had faith in my relationship, we're looking at it as a commodity, as something to have or possess in that way. We have to acquire it. And so by that, then what it means is some of us have more and some of us had less. We look to others, God, if I only had her faith, I could do such and such. That's not faith. When we think about this idea of just believing, really, we think of it as blind faith. And blind faith is when you just have been told something and you follow the party line, or you speak into something, but you have no feeling, passion, or conviction about it. How many of us were in spiritual tradition before, maybe when we were little, that we were repeating words or phrases that meant nothing to us? Yes? You're saying it, I remember being Catholic, and don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing on anyone, on anyone. I'm just saying that for me, I remember not being in connection to the words, even the Our Father. It took me being in unity and connecting to it to understand the power when we speak those words, what it can mean for our lives. So blind faith in something that is meaningless to us ultimately, or that are pithy phrases, or they sound nice in our world, that's not faith either. So what is faith? I want to start today by a few quotes by some Unity favorites of mine that help us kind of navigate into this today. Reverend Ed Rabel, who is a very famous Unity minister, says this: faith is the ability of the mind to open up and perceive reality. The outer factual world is not the real world. As we often say, it is not real. To be real, something must be eternal and unchanging. All appearances are constantly changing. So what's he saying is that oftentimes we base our faith on limited understanding or limited perception. And so we anchor ourselves in that. Again, the outside, anchoring it from the outside. And so let's think about it. Way back when, in history, folks believed the world was flat. Yes? Now, just because they believed it was flat didn't make it flat. And those that believed then came up and said, hey, I think the world is round. That didn't go so well for them right away, right? They were ostracized and they were even persecuted for having a different perception that they anchored, not by even seeing and knowing, but just trusting and guiding and knowing through things maybe that they observed in the world that gave them those feelings. Again, it didn't change the fact that it was not flat, it was round. That happens oftentimes in anything that we think about. I talked last week about the fact there's amazing things that we explore in technology now that first begin in the mind. Like when we would watch Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty. Guess what? We have cell phones now that beam people up. We have Zoom that beam people up from all over the world. Again, it's the perception that we have about things. It doesn't change the fact that in divine mind, all exists. It existed already. It was just a matter of calling it forth. Charles Fillmore, from his book, Christ Enthroned in Man, says this about faith. Faith it's an attribute of God. Faith is purely spiritual. It knows nothing less than supreme assurance. Faith is dauntless. It knows no defeat. As rays of sunshine creep through tangled vines and shed their warmth and glow in the dark corners, glow in the damp corners of the earth, so faith creeps through the dark, tangled meshes of human thought and radiates its strength and hope and courage. This consciousness, built on the rock of faith, becomes more and more fearless and free, and finally comes forward and says, behold, I am the Word made flesh. No task is too hard for me. He's talking about, again, connecting to this idea of faith as an attribute, as a power, as something we are aligning with, that we are connecting with. Oftentimes in Unity, it is said that we must have faith not to God, not faith in God, but faith from God. Meaning that it is emanating from our very essence. We are feeling it. We are feeling it in our bones. Eric Butterworth, who is my spiritual mentor from the beyond, never met him, but he says this about faith. The dynamic key, you see, again, is not faith in God, but faith from God. Let's think about that a little bit. Faith in God is trying to direct your attention consciously to something outside yourself. Faith from God begins with the basic premise that you live in God, you move in God, you have your being in God. God is the foundation of the ground of your being. You center yourself in that consciousness, and then you believe from that consciousness. You're not believing in an abstraction. You're not believing in an intangible. You're believing from a consciousness which enables you to put yourself in tune with the process. So we're learning that when we're talking about faith, in some senses, it is a mystery. It is mystical in that way. It is a law, yes, but that doesn't change the fact that there is this sense of feeling that comes with this knowing of faith. When we have anchored ourselves, has anyone had gone through a hard time, and you anchored yourself in faith, and you allowed that faith to come through and shine, and you saw the things that happened, how your life changed when you did that, were you not in awe? Anybody have that experience? That is what I'm talking about. Sometimes this is going to be my little shtick with my Unity ancestors, is that sometimes they wanted to just go all in on law. And I love that. I think that's important that we understand this. But there is a mystery around this. There is a mysticism, that feeling. And that's what I want us to understand, that when we anchor ourselves in that feeling, that becomes the knowing. Like, there's a lot of things that we have faith connection to that we don't know. Like, I have no idea how my cell phone works. Anybody? I just know it works, and I'm really happy that it does, right? We have electricity. We have the sound that works. We have this microphone. I can't see electricity. I don't quite know how it works. Some people are scientists, and they can, to the detail, tell you how it works. So we can't see it per se, but it's there. It's very much the same about this divine mind, this knowing, this faith, this consciousness, God. All of it becomes a way in which we connect because we just know. Somehow, deep within us, there's just this knowing. And so when we go all in on faith, we're creating the conditions. It's about creating the conditions so that we can get a manifestation, whatever that may mean for you. It's a foundation that we use in everything, all of our day-to-day life. That is what we're kind of working from, that base. Again, I don't know how these things work. We know the sun and the moon and the stars come out every day. It just happens. And so it's the same thing with us becoming in connection with this energy that just is, that we don't question. And not only do we not question it, we use it. We apply it. We activate it. In my office, I have a light switch, as most people do, right? But I have a dimmer. And I've never had a dimmer wherever I lived and worked. Maybe that sounds kind of like, wow, where was she living? But I really didn't. And it was the strangest thing when I first started. I never understood. God, it's really dark in here. What's going on? And it wasn't until I realized, the dimmer. Got it. Life is like that a lot, y'all. See, faith is, God is, the light is there. We just have to flip the switch on. And then sometimes it's the dimmer too. We may flip it on, but sometimes we turn it up and we turn it down, right? When we don't want to live the path of the enlightened one, turn that sucker down, right? It's like that. It's turning the light on and turning the dimmer up. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, right? But that really, in some senses, it clued into me. It kind of really resonated with me when I was thinking about this. It's always everywhere present. Light is. We just activate it. And we activate it by what we call positive faith. So we're talking about faith generally, but there is a distinction, y'all, because we have faith in a lot of things that are toxic. Come on now. Come on now. Yes? We have faith in things that are toxic. We have faith in fear. We have faith in worry. We have faith in insecurity. We have faith that that partner is going to do us wrong. We have faith that our child is not going to do what they're supposed to do. Yes? Don't have me be the only one now. We do. And that creates energy too. That is an energy of faith that we're affirming. So the idea here is to flip the script, to flip the switch maybe in a different way so that we are open to positive faith. I want to talk a little bit about faith with a Bible passage, with scripture, because I love to go to scripture. Now, some of y'all are like, I don't like the Bible, it doesn't do it for me. See it as a story, see it as an example, see it as a way just to see from an alternative point of view. So we're going to talk today about the faith of the Canaanite woman. It's in Matthew 15, verse 21 to 28. And I love this story. I will tell you, when I first read it, I was super perplexed because in that story, it seems like Jesus is being a little bit of a jerk. Anybody remember this one? So I was dumbfounded by it, but yet I was also intrigued. Like, what was really going on in this story? I've never used it in a service. Today's my first, and I'm really excited about it. This is what it says. Jesus left the place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from the region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "Well, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. Now, what's going on there? First of all, it's important that this woman is a Canaanite. There was many historical tensions between the Hebrew people, Jewish people, and the Canaanites. So they were staunch enemies. Now, in addition, there's many rules in terms of relationships between men and women. They were very codified, and so he's having conversation with this woman, an outside woman, a woman that would be considered unclean because she was from this other culture. She was an outsider. But yet something happens. He's telling her that even dogs, dogs, you're not going to give the food to dogs and children. So in a sense, it's sort of this play that he's making her related to a dog. Like, you are not worthy to be on the table. I'm not going to give. The children of Israel are my focus here. You are not. So I can't give you food. I can't give you nourishment. And yet she comes back at him and she says to him, "But even the dogs take the crumbs." She's saying to him in that moment, "You know what? I'm going to humble myself. You know what? I don't care what this past story is. I don't care what the relationship you think is to my people or to me or what you think of me. My daughter is dying. I have something that I need in my life. I have this desire." And the other thing that is important that we flag here is that she's standing up to Jesus. Then a word is already run, in the region about who he is. We look at Matthew before that, where Jesus is chastising his own disciples for not having faith, and yet he tells this woman that she has faith. What is happening? In that moment, we might say that she has aligned herself with the higher consciousness. She is willing and ready to step in front of the Lord, as she calls him in that moment, the Master, to even kneel before him and say, I am worthy. That's part of what's happening here. It's not that she's bowing down in submission. She's also bowing down and she's challenging him with her wordplay as well to say, I'm ready. I am aligned in the consciousness. I see you, Jesus. See, his disciples had not seen him yet fully. And yet this woman, this outsider, sees him. She's pushing him. And in that moment of the seeing of her perception of herself, of her alignment, of her consciousness, she is creating the conditions for change. It is her boldness. It is her persistence where Jesus understands that her consciousness is ready, and then healing occurs, not just for herself, but for her daughter. It's a wonderful story for us to start playing with this idea of how faith anchors in, about where is it that we need to move into to be able to have the transformation in our lives that so many of us want. Sometimes, we can call what Jesus did with this woman a test of fate. And I don't like to call it a test of fate because it almost seems like negative, or I don't know what, but it's not a test of faith. It's what I would think of as this openness, this opening that the Master gives for her to be ready to elevate herself. I thought about this in the connection to a movie that I was obsessed with in the 80s. Anybody remember The Karate Kid? I don't know how, Spirit just speaks to me, y'all. I can't, I'm sorry, I don't know. But I remember The Karate Kid, and when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Ralph Macchio and the movie. And I remember Mr. Miyagi, the famous thing, right? Wax on, wax off, right? Or the other one, right? Right side, left side, or up, down. Y'all remember that? As he's telling Daniel to do this, Daniel's like, why are you having me do these tasks? They make no sense. But in a sense, Mr. Miyagi was waiting to see if he was ready, waiting to see if he was ready to rise in consciousness, if he was ready to rise and understand who he was as a powerful being. And so we see throughout the course of the movie that, Daniel's son's consciousness was ready to meet his greatness. He didn't understand what was happening when he was doing all those tasks, and there was a little bit of pushback, but he still did all the tasks that Mr. Miyagi had him do. And in the end, we see the tasks were a way to prepare him to engage in karate. But it was also preparing him to be able to understand his power. All of this, good people, it sounds like a funny story that I'm saying, something funny, but there's so much power in even this little movie example about what's happening here. So then the question we're asking, that sounds great. And I'm not asking him to be a karate person, but then how do we open to faith? I'm going to give you a couple things that as kind of homework, if you will, or things to think about as we move into this idea of opening to faith. The first thing is take stock of what you have faith in. As I said, do we have faith in fear? Do we have faith in shame? Faith in blame? Faith in things not working out, faith in that our bank account will always be low. What is our faith in? And then challenge yourself to reframe that faith from a positive faith. The second thing, are you training your subconscious mind to believe? Our mind is malleable, and our mind is ready to receive from divine mind, from that higher knowing, from that eternal wisdom, but we have to be able to train it. We have the ho-ho-hum from the world, from the television, from the newspapers, from our families, from teachers, from all these people, and so we have to be able to set that time for ourselves to train our mind, just like we would train our bodies as an athlete. We have to train our mind. So what does that mean? Practicing the presence, practicing the presence. And we do that through meditation or prayer or affirmation or whatever other spiritual tools you may have. That sounds great, but are you using a daily discipline? Ooh, I know people get mad when I talk about discipline, don't you all? I get mad at myself. I'm like, oh, God, okay, right? But it is. We have to take the time, the discipline in our lives to be able to take this seriously, y'all. You cannot come to Sunday service to come for an hour and think that your lives will change. Maybe some of you will. Hallelujah. But it takes time. It takes effort. It takes a discipline. It takes the seriousness and the faith to go all in on this. So what is your daily practice? And how might you engage in a daily practice, even if it's 5 minutes? It's about catching ourselves when we're not with that light switch on. It's about catching ourselves when maybe the light's on, but the dimmer is down. The last one I want to say is what Emmett Fox called building and wrecking. Do we have that dimmer switch up? We're here on Sunday service. We're all in on faith, and then we walk out the door of the sanctuary, we flip those lights off completely, and we engage in toxic behavior. Maybe we're walking out the door, slip that light switch on, and we're gossiping. We're gossiping about what we saw in service. We're gossiping about what was said. We're talking about your minister. Nobody here, of course. Yes, it happens. How are we doing that? You're building up your consciousness. You're building up that connection. You're building that faith from within, and then you're blowing it all to shreds. We have to call ourselves on this. You know, you can't just put on that Sunday suit of faith and then take it off and put it back in the closet to get dust. As I move to close, I want to just share a couple things. These are Jesus's phrases from the Bible that many of us have heard, but I want us to hear them again with open hearts, open minds, and with our eyes and ears to hear. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. According to your faith, be it done unto you. Thy faith has made thee whole. Go in peace. If ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. We are not growing faith per se. We are allowing faith. We are allowing for ourselves to be in our right and true relationship with Spirit, with God, with allness, with oneness, with whatever that name is of that essence or energy that you connect with. It's about being open and receptive. And it's really about an experience, a feeling that we're trying to sort of be more in connection with than a thing. Like the Canaanite woman, We have to call the question on ourselves if we are stepping in and out of faith to have a healing, a manifestation, a transformation. And I ask you, how bad do you want it? Are you willing to humble yourself? Are you willing to embarrass yourself because faith is pouring out of your pores? Are you willing to be thought of as crazy? Because some people think we're crazy, right, y'all? Because of the power that we believe that we inherently have. Are you willing to be bold? Are you willing to persist? Are you willing to be disciplined in these practices? I'm going to close by a famous quote from Mr. Miyagi. He says to Daniel, "Walk on road home, walk left side, safe. Walk right side, safe. Walk middle, sooner or later, just squish like a grape." Here, karate, same thing. Either you karate do yes or karate do no. You do karate guess so, just like grape. Understand? That is like us here. Faith is not a guess so. We must say yes. We must have that faith in ourselves, in each other, in the world, in the goodness and the godness that we inhabit and exhibit and are in order for us to be able to go all in. See, going all in is saying, yes, yes, I don't want to be squished like a grape. I want to be victorious. I want to be in alignment. I want to be in joy. I want to be happy. I know that I'm whole, healthy, and complete, and I claim that here and now. We're going all in, positive faith, turning the lights on, turning that dimmer up so that we can raise our consciousness to meet the holy. Who wants to raise their consciousness to meet the holy? Because nobody wants to get squished like a grape, right? Turn to somebody right now and say, "I'm going all in." Turn to somebody else and say, "I'm going all in now." Turn to somebody else and say, "You are going in on faith now." And so it is. Amen.